Welcome to Georgetown University and the McDonough School of Business. My name is Patricia Grant. I'm the Dean for our undergraduate business program. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all here this evening to engage in what will surely be a lively conversation given those who are on the agenda. Thank you for that. We here at Georgetown are proud to host this inaugural event of the DC chapter of Conscious Capitalism. It is our belief that Conscious Capitalism and Georgetown McDonough School of Business are natural partners. We share the belief that business can be and should be a powerful force for good in society. So thank you to the Conscious Capitalism DC chapter for coming to Georgetown for your kickoff event. It looks like you've been having a good time so far. So without further ado, I'm now proud to introduce one of the nation's most conscious capitalists and one of the most successful entrepreneurs in our region, co-founder of The Motley Fool and co-founder of this DC chapter of Conscious Capitalism, David Gardner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm truly just a fool, so I'm not any of the things that you said. But thank you very much, Patricia. You're not a liar. You're awesome, and we're so glad to be here with you all tonight. This is almost like a "this is your life" moment for me because I have ties to lots of people, and yet ties to not everybody. Lots of new people, which makes me so excited to be here because 10 years ago, I went to Austin, Texas, for the very first time. And there I had been invited by John Mackey, who is the co-founder of Whole Foods, and started Conscious Capitalism. And there was a remarkable man that I met on that trip who gave a great talk that changed how I viewed business. Now, I was simpatico with a lot of the ideas of the movement. I say things on my podcast like, make your portfolio reflect your best vision for our future. Your dollars, both the ones you spend, but also the ones you invest, say so much about who you are, should say, and indeed shape the future in a very real, organic way. And so let's invest that way, invest toward that. So I've thought those things over time, but to meet that new crew 10 years ago for the first time in Austin, Texas, and realize it was all real. It was called Conscious Capitalism. And I'll have an opportunity in just another minute or two to mention who was that person that I met in Austin, Texas 10 years ago. But 1 year ago in Austin, Texas, I found myself on the national board of Conscious Capitalism. So 1 year ago, I got up in front of everybody and I said, I'm embarrassed because my children are fourth generation Washington, D.C. We're born here. This is our city. I love our city. I love Conscious Capitalism. I'm on the national board. We don't have a chapter. We don't have a functioning chapter for Conscious Capitalism in the nation's capital. And so what does it take? And they said, well, would you write a check? And I said, yes, I would write the check. But they said, more than the check, it's this. It's the ground war. It's the people that you know. It's the love. It's the people who've already been doing this far before I ever heard about it. It's all of us that are starting this chapter. If you're not aware of this, this is day one. This is ground zero for Conscious Capitalism DC. You're here. You're part of us. One of my favorite people. One of my favorite people in business, Roy Spence, one of the lines he likes to rock is, dream it, build it. Well, that's what we're doing. We dreamed of this, and we're building it. And it is indeed us all together doing that. Roy also says, by the way, he's the one, GSD&M is his firm. They do all the marketing and branding for like Southwest Airlines. If you've ever giggled at any of their ads over the years, that's Roy. And another thing he said is, the greatest joy in life is to put something there that wasn't there before. And think about that. It's true. And that's what we're doing together. So thank you very much for that. Before I talk about joy, I have great joy in sharing out who's here. And I just want to, I'm not embarrassing anybody, and I can't possibly speak to everybody, but I want to make sure that you know who is around you tonight. I wanted to write this out because I'm pretty excited by what a broad and diverse group of people we have. So before I introduce my friend Raj, I just want to say thank you to some of the best area leaders in the world of food. Not asking anybody to stand up, but Jose Andres Think Food Group is a Washington, D.C. company. I will say, by the way, I should say hold your applause because everybody's awesome and it would take too long. And we got to get to Raj. So, Founding Farmers Restaurant Group is around. Geppetto Catering, a longtime Motley Fool partner. And Hungry, These are all people that are around you right now. Or how about funders? Conscious Venture Labs, Ashoka, Motley Fool Ventures, Revolution, Rise of the Rest, all sitting in this august crowd tonight. Law firms like Hogan Lovells and Venable and Baker McKenzie, doing law better, more consciously, thinking about how to have a better experience for their clients and for all of us as much as law matters to the city. DC standbys like Washington Gas, things I grew up with, Washington Performing Arts, Amtrak and Smithsonian, you are all here tonight as well. We're excited to have you. Diverse banks, from the World Bank to the Capital Area Food Bank, you're here tonight. Thank you so much for being part of us. And yeah, I mean, as long as we're going to go with kind of fun, bounce it around, how diverse are we? Fannie Mae to the National Park Service, to The Economist, to the U.S. Marine Corps. So thank you all for being part of us tonight. We are all imperfect. Before I introduce Raj, who's as perfect as anybody I know within this movement, but I want to make sure that you know that even though we love this, we know it's the humanity of it, and that we all can do better. And my hope and dream for our chapter, here by the way this is the mission. My hope is that we all do this together, and in so doing, we just improve each of our organizations, for-profit and not-for-profit. You make me more awesome. I try to make you more awesome. That's really the focus of the Washington, D.C. chapter for Conscious Capitalism. And I've felt it very much. 10 years, the Motley Fool has been enormously benefited. A lot of fools in the audience, thank you for coming out tonight as well. So you know we're so much better that we're part of this than if we'd never heard of it. So yeah, we're going to have moments like these. These are kind of Austin, Texas moments that I recognized over the last 10 years. When I first met that person 10 years ago that I wanted to let you know is here tonight, because my dream was to have Raj Sisodia give the talk that I saw him give 10 years ago in Washington, D.C. And so here we are tonight with my good friend Raj Sisodia about to do what I dreamed about a decade ago. So it's a tremendous honor to introduce Raj. He is the Distinguished Professor of Global Business at Babson College in the Boston area, coming down to be with us tonight with his talented partner, Neha. Thank you so much, Raj and Neha. Raj co-founded Conscious Capitalism. It's an organization that's founded on the philosophy that free enterprise capitalism is the most powerful economic system for social cooperation and human progress ever conceived. It's not perfect, but try to top it when practiced consciously. He's the author of a handful of noteworthy books, among them Firms of Endearment, Conscious Capitalism, and most recently, The Healing Organization. Please join me in welcoming my good friend and yours, Raj Sisodia.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That is an unimpeachable man. I couldn't help it. You know, this is a bit of a homecoming. I spent 10 years across the river at George Mason University and left in 1998. I had my midlife crisis there. I was a very unhappy academic without meaning and purpose in what I was doing. And fortunately, a few years later, I did stumble onto the path that has led me to this evening. And again, it's a real delight to be here with all of you. And it's a wonderful turnout, thanks to the love and inspiration spread by David and the entire team here. So thank you again. I'm going to give an overview. It's not exactly what you heard 10 years ago. Hopefully, I've learned a couple of additional things, and it's evolved. But it's more or less the overview of what is this and why is this, right? And the book is called Liberating the Heroic Spirit of Business. I've added the word caring. I want to highlight that. And you can see the more recent book, The Healing Organization. It kind of gets, we go deeper and deeper into this terrain, and we realize ultimately it is about the heart. This is about bringing heart and soul into the world of business. So if I had to articulate my personal purpose, which has become more clear to me over time, especially in the last year, is to bring heart, healing, and soul to business and leadership so that we can build a better world for all. We can't build a better world without the world of business, right? Business impacts our world in every possible way, but we can't do that without great leadership. Great leaders make for great businesses, which make for a great world. So we have to impact leaders in a way that not only is about the intellectual, but also the heart and soul. And I think that's what's been missing. Capitalism and business and all of that has been a very analytical, intellectual, and I would dare to say even a sort of a masculine pursuit. And one of the things that I've realized is that we need to bring more of the healthy feminine into this, and that's kind of been my journey. I worked with a coach for the first time last year. I was turning 60, I was writing a book about healing, and people told me, you better work on your own healing before you write this book. And I said, I don't have time, I got a book deadline. I said, book deadlines are flexible. If you don't do that, you're going to write a very shallow book. So I actually took a few months, or 5 months, I delayed the book, and I had all these experiences going to the Himalayas when I turned 60 with a group of people I wrote a book called Shakti Leadership, which is about the masculine, feminine coming together in leadership and the need for that. And then I had a 10-day experience in the Amazon rainforest in Ecuador with the Pachamama Alliance, understanding our connection to nature, the fact that we come from this planet, we are part of nature, and yet we've separated ourselves. And I also worked with a coach for the first time. And as she heard my life journey and the story of my work and my personal life, and she said, at the end of that, do you realize that you have been honoring your mother with your work for the last 15 years, ever since I got on this path? And that's really something that, I'll come back to that theme a little bit later, but I think that's the energy that the world has been missing. That's why we are in the situation we're in. We made a lot of progress, but we've caused a lot of suffering at the same time. And we need to reconnect to all of the essential human energies. And we've suppressed many of them, especially the mother energy, the feminine energy. That's why we are destroying our mother, the earth, because we're not connected to that energy. So before we talk about conscious capitalism, it's interesting, you can get a PhD in business without actually learning about capitalism. Okay, I know that was my experience. It was only when we wrote the book that we actually dug into the history of capitalism. And you just kind of assume that we've always had this and this has been kind of the default way of organizing, but actually that's not true. We have not had this. It's a relatively recent idea. If you look at the economic history of the world for the last 2,000 years, there are reasonable estimates that we can come up with for per capita incomes, adjusted for inflation and purchasing power. Okay, and you can see that below, but for most of that time, it was below $500 per person per year. So what does that mean? That 90 to 95% of people were surviving on less than $1 a day, which means they were barely staying alive. Life is a daily struggle just to see another day for you and your family, right? And so abject, extreme poverty, of course, people are illiterate, 28 to 32-year life expectancy for most of that time. Right? So life was, as they say, nasty, short, and brutish. For the vast majority of people, a tiny fraction of people had it better off. If you were born into the landed gentry or the aristocracy, you would have a somewhat decent life, but even none of us would trade our lives for those lives. Right? So that was humanity's condition, and you can see as we came out of the Dark Ages into the Middle Ages, we started waking up collectively as a species. We had the Renaissance and printing, and we started to see an uptick on us exploring sort of the higher reaches of our own capacities, but none of that impacted ordinary people. Peasants were still toiling away, doing what they did. Another 200 years go by where the age of reason and enlightenment, Newton and Galileo, understanding the laws of nature, our place in the universe. Huge leaps ahead for humanity, no impact on ordinary humans. So what finally changed were a few things that came together in the 18th century. And you can see that in a very short period, within a quarter century, the world changed dramatically. It's kind of like the last quarter century we've lived through as well. In fact, this would be even more dramatic. So around 1750, we had the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution in Scotland, and then spreading from there. Right? So this was the greatest technological leap we've ever taken, where our productive capacity went up by orders of magnitude. We could now mass produce things. Things that used to be considered luxuries were now affordable. We could have standardized quality and low cost. Right? And places that had access to those technologies saw an uptick in productivity and therefore in prosperity. So that was a significant breakthrough, but that itself wasn't enough. We also needed an intellectual breakthrough. And that also came from Scotland. So you'll have new respect for Scotland after this, because I used to think Scotland is a little country, right? They gave us what? Scotch whiskey? That's pretty good, right? And golf, right? That's pretty good for a little country, but they also gave us the Scottish Enlightenment. They gave us the Industrial Revolution, and they gave us a moral philosopher named Adam Smith, who asked a simple question: why do some places become prosperous and others remain poor? And most people would have said it has to do, of course, with natural resources, right? Some places are blessed by God. And he said, no, that doesn't explain prosperity. Others would have said it has to do with the work ethic. Some people just are more organized and they work harder. Didn't explain it. What he found explained prosperity was freedom. Societies rooted in individual freedom were the ones that actually elevated prosperity, because people could pursue their passions and their dreams and express their gifts. and they could trade the fruits of their labor with each other. The state actually encouraged and enabled those things rather than prevented those. And that's most societies actually were structured in a way that it prevented that from happening. So again, one of history's great insights, freedom leads to prosperity. We all want freedom and we also desire prosperity. The two actually go together. Right? So that's again a tremendous historical insight. So those two things were important, but we lacked a place where those ideas actually could be manifested because Europe was still a highly stratified society with a lot of barriers to social mobility, pretty much limited by the circumstances of your birth. And that's where we had a tremendous, it's kind of a historic coincidence that that same year that he published Wealth of Nations, the United States was born as an idea when the Declaration of Independence was issued that year. Of course, it would not become a country for some time, but this is the first country that came into existence because of a set of ideas that people believed in. And the ideas revolved around freedom. Religious freedom initially, but then we had Renaissance Enlightenment thinkers who were the founding fathers, and they brought in all of those values, right? So political freedom, economic freedom, reason, egalitarianism, individualism, etc., all of those values were part of that extraordinary document. And so this was the first society where common man, and I do mean man, because these rights were limited to men and white men, right? So, but even there, they were revolutionary compared to what else existed. But the common man was in charge of his own destiny by right of law. You didn't have to be born into the landed gentry or the aristocracy. You could rise from nothing to great heights. So that was the system that was created here, and the combination of those things enabled humanity to take off. So democracy and capitalism kind of came here and then took off, and then were re-exported back to the world. And it has enabled humanity to take off in a dramatic fashion. You can see per capita incomes have gone up about 1,500% worldwide, much more than that in the industrialized countries. Life expectancy has gone from about 30 to about 74 now. Literacy has gone from 13% to 87%. Our population reached 1 billion in 1820, now 7.4 billion. The percentage of people living in extreme poverty was 90% in 1800, and it's about 8.5% now. Right? So massive impacts on billions of people, right? So not just a few people getting wealthy, but this is a system that has created mass prosperity and extended and deepened and enriched human lives. I think we have to recognize what capitalism has meant and what it has given us, right? Because otherwise we're in danger of losing some of those benefits that we've had. Because we also have to recognize that there is a lot of concern and cynicism in the present time about capitalism. That's actually not a new story in the sense that it's been going on for quite a while. Roughly around 1970, we kind of latched on to this idea that business only exists for profit maximization, shareholder value. That was Milton Friedman's famous essay. And around that time, Gallup started tracking confidence in societal institutions. You can see the confidence in big business has actually gone down pretty steadily over that time. It was about 16% during the financial crisis. It's about 23% currently. So more than 75% of Americans don't trust big business. Right? And that's a high level of cynicism and distrust. And the question is, does it really matter? Well, if you look at data like this, that 88% of Americans feel they work for a company that just sees them as a function or an object, not as a human being whose needs really matter, whose lives matter. Right? So the workplace has become dehumanized and uncaring. And then you look at the reality that in this, the richest country in the history of the world at a time of economic boom by many measures, stock market at record highs, unemployment below 4%, 3.5% actually, considered full employment, that 50% of Americans actually have less than $400 in the bank. And if they needed to raise $2,000, if they had a small emergency, right, your car breaks down, your kid gets sick, your heating system breaks down in January, you could face a ruinous incident, right? You could lose everything. I just read that 40% of people who get cancer lose their entire life savings within 2 years in this country, right? So again, there's something in our system that is not working well currently, despite at some level, certain numbers looking good. So I would say that traditional American-style capitalism, which we would define as short-term and financially focused, right? So the quarterly reporting, that rhythm, that cycle, and really focusing only on profit maximization as the sole purpose of business, that idea has really not worked or has not been working, certainly in the last few decades. I think the worker pay for the last about 40 years is essentially flat, where executive pay has gone up about 940% in that time, right? So the fruits of this system, the system is still generating a lot of value in some ways, right? But also a lot of negative consequences on people and on the planet. And those benefits are not being equally distributed or well distributed, and the downside, the costs, the so-called side effects, are becoming unaffordable to all of us. We simply can't afford the damage that we're doing to humans and to the planet anymore because of the way in which we've been operating. And the fact is that because of all of this dissatisfaction, now you see that a majority of young Americans think that socialism might be a better thing than capitalism. Right? Now, socialism in the classic sense, government ownership of the means of production, I mean, that's been tried 41 times. We know that doesn't work. I mean, that's kind of a case closed, right? But there's a hunger. Why? Why do people get attracted? Because socialism promises decency. And we want decency. Now, capitalism promises dynamism and actually delivers on dynamism, right? Creative destruction, innovation, all of that. But doesn't really focus on decency. Socialism promises but can't really deliver on decency. It becomes the equal sharing of misery over time. We want dynamism with decency. We want both. Why can't we have both? Why do we have to pick one or the other? I was recently in South America, and you can see now that much more than terrorism, what's the big thing that's going on right now is economic distress in the world. This is in Chile, millions of people. That's the richest economy in all of South America, by the way, the most, run by the so-called Chicago boys, right? Milton Friedman students, a radically free market system that was created there. And it led to overall prosperity. But if you look at the distribution of income, right? I mean, it hasn't really reached, so therefore there's massive protests that are going on. You got Bolivia, you got Ecuador, you got Spain. I mean, there's lots of places you can see the rise of populist movements across the world. Again, this is because the consequences of the way in which we have been doing business are now starting to come home. So where did we go wrong? How did we take this idea that is fundamentally rooted in freedom and dignity for individuals and create a world in which the vast majority of people are cynical and disengaged and alienated and actually suffering in many ways, health consequences and other things, while they're gaining material prosperity? Life expectancy right now, by the way, is declining in the US for the first time in a very long time, right? And I would argue that if you had to distill it all down, it's really this one single thing that is at the root of this. The idea that business only exists for one reason, and that is profit maximization or shareholder value maximization. This one idea has done more harm in the world than almost any other idea. And first of all, it's a very selfish way to think about a business, that the business only exists to benefit this one group of people, while others are pouring their lives and their health and their family's well-being into that enterprise, right? It's an instrumental view. In other words, it treats the well-being of people as a means to another end, which is to make money. That people's well-being only matters to the extent that it makes more money. I read recently that, a few years ago, there was a cover story on Harvard Business Review with a smiley face, and it said, happiness is profitable. Okay? It said, happier employees are more productive. So a lot of CEOs saw that and said, okay, we need some more happiness around here. Like, what do we do, right? This is going to make us more money, right? Get me more happiness. But that's like asking somebody to marry you, and she says, why do you want to marry me? You say, well, married men live 5 years longer. And they make 30% more money in their lifetime, right? So I think it's a good idea, right? So we should do it for the right reasons, right? We should care for people because people are worth caring for. And it's a very narrow way to think about business. Business creates so many impacts on our lives and on our communities and on other species and on this planet and on our future. We can't just focus on this one thing. And here's the irony, it doesn't even work. Shareholder value maximization or profit maximization doesn't work. Even for shareholders, you can see that return on assets, which is a reasonable proxy for profitability, over the last 45 years or so, has actually gone down, coincident with the rise of shareholder primacy, right? So in that sense, shareholder value theory has failed even on its own terms, which is this is going to make you a lot of money and then you figure out what to do with that money. Well, no, it actually doesn't, because it doesn't align the forces of value creation. You've got people who are cynical and disengaged and just showing up, right? Presenteeism, absenteeism, all of that. I mean, there's tremendous downside when you make this your sole focus. And there's a lot of research on this. This article actually does a great job of summarizing 10 adverse outcomes when managers focus on creating shareholder value. Negative impacts on society, on communities, on the environment, on customers, on employees, on their children, on their families, and on shareholders. Shareholders do worse when a company is purely about shareholder value maximization. The literature, and this is a survey article, right? It's about a 40-page article that looks at all the literature from economics, from psychology, from all the fields, organizational behavior. The literature provides compelling evidence that governing companies, in order to maximize current stock prices, can lead to severe negative consequences for all corporate constituencies, including society and shareholders as well. This idea is bankrupt. It doesn't work, and it has caused us a lot of damage along the way. But listen, this Milton Friedman talked about it, yes, but Friedman is not God, okay? And as Peter Drucker said, the social universe has no natural laws. This means that assumptions that were valid yesterday can become invalid and indeed totally misleading in no time at all. There's a paradigm shift that happens, and suddenly you say, oh my God, what delusion were we under, that you can run this entire complex human undertaking like a math problem. It's got to maximize this one thing. Why? Because managers need to be told what to do. Well, I'm sorry. Business is not a math problem. It's not a machine with inputs and outputs, right? We need to think of it as a complex, living, adaptive system in which all kinds of things are interconnected and interdependent. So you can see that we are actually in the midst of a fundamental rethinking. So we've been at this for 11 years. Conscious capitalism started in 2008. And for a long time, we were a voice in the wilderness, right? It's like the mainstream of business and capitalism in business schools. I mean, we tried to get into business schools, and they were not having any of it, right? So shareholder value is sort of dogma and gospel in business school. The finance professors rule the roost. I don't know how it is here. Actually, it's different in Georgetown, I'm sure. Right? But you can see that it's going on. You can see reimagining capitalism, next capitalist revolutions, what are companies for? I mean, this is going on. The Business Roundtable issued their statement 4 months ago for the first time, saying that businesses need to have a purpose and they need to think about the well-being of all stakeholders and think really long term. And Larry Fink has been saying that, right? The head of Blackstone, which is the largest money manager in the world, $6.4 trillion, right? So a lot of people are now starting to come around to this idea that business needs to have a purpose, it needs to be about stakeholders, etc. So again, the kind of things I think that we've been trying to bring about, at least people are talking about it. They're maybe not doing it. The 185 companies that are part of the Business Roundtable, yeah, maybe a handful, I would say, are conscious companies today. But the others are talking about it. That's good. That's a sign. You know, I was in Berlin recently for the Conscious Capitalism Europe conference, and we had our hotel right next to the Berlin Wall. And there's about 1.5 miles of it that's been preserved. And you can walk there and imagine what life was like 30 years ago exactly, November of '89, right? And when that wall was brought down, that was a turning point in human history. And nobody could have imagined on November 7th what would happen. The world changed, just like 9/11, but even in a bigger way, I think the world changed in 1989, right? So there's a Berlin Wall moment somewhere in our future, I believe, where suddenly now we think differently. We say, you know, how could we think that it's only about those things, right? So whether that's there or not, I'm not sure if the Business Roundtable is it, but the key thing I think for us is that we need to first of all celebrate capitalism, okay? We should not minimize what it has done, and not just for a few people. There are young women in college today in India and China that would not have been born had those countries not embraced some version of capitalism. And it's not a perfect version in either country, right? But this idea has made such a difference in the lives of ordinary people. So we need to celebrate capitalism, but we also need to elevate it. Because anything you use with a different level of consciousness will be different. A surgeon can use a scalpel to save your life. Somebody else can use it to kill you, right? This is one of the most powerful tools we've ever discovered, to harness human energies and human capacities for collective good. Or we can tap into the worse angels, or not the better angels, but the demons of our nature. We can tap into our selfishness and greed, or we can tap into our altruism and our desire to care for each other, depending on how we lead and how we use this, right? So we need to celebrate and elevate capitalism and not decimate it, but the way we are going, we are going to decimate it. Those scenes you see from South America, they'll show up here very soon. These are the things revolutions are made of. When that many people are suffering that much, when 60% of American households are technically insolvent, and you can say, yeah, those are the lazy people. No, they're working harder than most of us in this room. Okay? They're just not getting any breaks, and they're not being treated the way people should be treated, right? And that could lead to an overthrow of the system, and that will redound to all of our, that'll hurt all of us and our future, right? We cannot decimate this, but we do need to elevate it. Otherwise, it will get destroyed. So what has the story of business been? Calvin Coolidge was the president in the roaring 20s, just before the Great Depression came. Right? The US was in a boom time then. And he made a speech in which he said, the business of America is business. And if you think about it, it's really true. This is the most entrepreneurial nation ever created. Young American kids never grew up dreaming of a government job, okay, like we did in India. Okay, the best job was a government job in the 70s. When I came out of high school, the marginal tax rate was 97.5%. India was a socialist paradise, okay, run by Nehru, and the whole government controlled the commanding heights of the economy. It was a free democracy and free markets, but completely controlled by the government, right? American kids grew up with a dream that you can do anything, you can build anything, right? The circumstances of your birth don't limit you. But this does beg the question, what is the business of business? Because this could be a wonderful thing depending on how we define the purpose of business. And for a long time, that's where we've been stuck, is what Alfred Sloan, who built General Motors into the largest company in the history of the world, said the business of business is business, okay? So he said, we make cars, but really we make money. Right? Cars are just a means. So our job is to make money. Right? So we should do our job and you do your job. Universities do what you do. Government does what they do, etc. You stay in your lane, do your job, and that's what it's all about. But as we've said, we think that's a very narrow way to think about business. And another way to think about it, which one of my heroes, the greatest leader I've ever met or even read about from the business world, is Herb Kelleher. And he actually died while we were writing the Healing Organization. And I got the chance to interview him a few years ago, and once actually had dinner with him. I'm an incredible human being, right? And he's, to me, the perfect leader, perfect embodiment of all of the qualities of a great conscious leader. One of the phrases that I'll use later is, actually, I'll save that. But so he said, the business of business is people, yesterday, today, and forever. It's all about the flourishing of people. And of course, connected to that, the flourishing of the planet and all life, right? Now think about Southwest Airlines, almost 50 years old, started in the early 1970s. In those 50 years, they've grown almost consistently. Had you invested in them, right? I mean, they were worth more than all the other airlines put together by multiples at different points in time. And they've grown consistently year after year, 50 years. They have never laid off a single employee. Even after 9/11, they didn't lay off anybody. Other airlines broke union contracts because this was a massive disruption. They've never had a single strike, even though they're the most heavily unionized of all the airlines. They've never had a single passenger casualty until last year when there was a freak accident in an engine. And their stock market symbol is love, L-U-V. And you go to their offices and the walls are plastered with pictures of people with Herb Kelleher and Colleen Barrett. Colleen was the president, Herb was the CEO. She used to be his legal secretary. He was a lawyer, right? They worked together for decades. Colleen spoke at many of our events. She said, Herb was the dad and I was the mom. That's how we did it. She built the culture and Herb was, but incredibly loving. So there's pictures of people with Herb. When he walked from his office to the parking lot, it took him about 40 minutes. Not because he was lame, but because every 5 minutes or 5 feet, somebody wanted to stop and take a picture and get a hug from Herb, right? So that's what he embodied as a leader. And you can see the extraordinary success of Southwest Airlines, beloved by customers, by employees, by communities, and by investors. So how do we solve this problem? Like, where do we go from here? We know that the old way is not working. What do we need to change? As Einstein said, you can't solve any problem with the same level of consciousness, right, that created it. So what was that level of consciousness and how does it need to change? And that's where the tenets of conscious capitalism come in. So there are 4 fundamental questions about anything, right? Why are we doing this? What are we doing? Who are we as leaders? And how does it feel to work here? And there's a low consciousness answer to that. It was about, I taught strategy for 22 years in a business school. I never once used the word purpose because the purpose was given to us, maximize profits. Okay, now how do we do it, right? And now we say, no, we don't know. Until we know where we're going, we can't figure out how we get there. Right? So there has to be a purpose. So the low consciousness answer to that is profits. The high consciousness is there needs to be a higher purpose. Every one of us in this room hopefully has thought about our own life purpose, right? Beyond survival and beyond just making money. What are we going to do with this precious gift, this unique, set of gifts that you brought individually, right? How are you going to express that? What is your purpose? Likewise, every business needs to have its own higher purpose. We talk about that a little more. What do we do? Well, it used to be we make money for shareholders. Right? That's the only number that matters at the end of the day. That's the only dependent variable. And now we say, no, we need to actually create well-being and value for all of our stakeholders. Everybody needs to win out of this business, right? Simultaneously, we need to create value for all of them, and we need to actually make it so it's not a trade-off. That in order to benefit my employees, I don't need to squeeze my investors or my customers or any of those, right? That simultaneously everybody should be able to be uplifted. So we get to win-win. In order to win-win-win, right? We have to give. Everybody has to be part of that system collectively. So integrate the interests of all stakeholders together. And then who are we as leaders? It used to be, well, the people who deliver the numbers, the ones who get to be leaders. Consistently deliver the numbers quarter after quarter, you'll climb the corporate ranks. And now we say, no, you need to be purpose-driven and stakeholder-oriented. Right? You need to care about the people you serve. You need to care about where you're taking those people. So conscious leaders who care about people and purpose ahead of power and ego and money. They're not just in it for their own purposes. They're actually there to take people to a better place. And then cultures. How does it feel to work here? Most cultures are filled with fear and stress, and these cultures have a lot of trust and caring. Now, for each of these, I have an acronym, and this is one of my weird superpowers, right? We all have superpowers. I can come up with an acronym that makes sense to me, right, those acronyms. But we'll talk about those. So we'll start with purpose. Somebody at our conference in Austin in October expressed it well. I think the purpose of business is not to make a profit. It sounds pretty radical in a business school, right? I'm not saying the purpose of business is to not make a profit. I'm saying it is not to make a profit. You see the distinction? We're not trying to lose money, but that's not our purpose, right? The purpose of business is to produce profitable solutions to the problems of people on the planet. Because if it's not a profitable solution, then you don't have a business. Then you have a nonprofit, or maybe the government needs to do it, right? It has to be something worth doing and important. And the genius of business is we figure out a business model so it becomes self-sustaining and scalable. Right? And certainly it cannot be about profiting while hurting people or the planet, and that's unfortunately what we've been doing. You know, the Dalai Lama said our primary job in life is to help each other, and if we can't help each other, at least don't hurt each other. We're actually hurting each other through business. And that's actually the basis for that book. You know, there's a tremendous amount of suffering that we're causing because of the way in which we run businesses. So every great purpose, for years started to, I was using this phrase, that every great purpose is a healing purpose, because healing was my acronym for the qualities of a great purpose, right? But the reason why I was using healing was I said, you know, there's a lot of suffering, so every business actually should try to alleviate suffering in some way, in its own way. You know, all the restaurant companies in India, they're actually nourishing people, nourishing bodies. You know, other companies do it in other. Well, it doesn't matter what your business is. If you do it right and meet people's real needs, you're healing them in that dimension, right? So you're reducing their suffering, you can elevate joy and enable healthy growth. And then that stands for the qualities of a great purpose. As you can see, it's heroic. It's not easy, right? A true purpose that is going to challenge you, it's going to stretch you to the breaking point. You have to go on a hero's journey, right? You have to face the dragons and the demons ultimately to realize that dream. But it's worth doing. It evolves as you evolve and as the needs of the world change. Your purpose will also evolve. It aligns everybody together. This is very important. See, if you don't have a shared purpose, you're literally at cross purposes with your stakeholders. Because if the CEO gets up and says, we're going to maximize profits for shareholders, customers hear that and say, I'm going to maximize my profit, which means get the lowest price every single time. Doesn't matter. No loyalty. Employees say, I'm going to work as little and get paid as much as possible. Suppliers say, I'm going to maximize my margins, cut corners where I can. Society says, I'm going to tax you as much as possible. Everybody wants to maximize their piece of it. Everybody becomes a taker from the system. No system can thrive if every component of that is saying, how much can I get out of this? Right? In order for that to thrive, everybody, in order to win, we have to give. And the spiritual principle is the more we give, the more we receive. Right? But the focus has to be to start out on giving. Right? So if you're part of Whole Foods, when Whole Foods started under the name of Safer Way in 1978, and they had their purpose, which was to educate people that what you put into your body makes a difference to your health and the health of the food system and the health of the planet ultimately. And people who believed in that came to work there, and they were passionate about that. And people who cared about that came and shopped there, and other people invested in it. And suppliers, came and worked with them and gave them good terms, right? Everybody was aligned around that idea. Everybody's on the same side of the table. There are no competing interests. Everybody wants to see this thing succeed. Right? So again, a purpose aligns people. It's like a magnet that pulls you in the right direction and glue that holds you together. That's what a great purpose and shared values will do. It's rooted in love and care. It's not about exploiting people. It's not about using people. It's about caring for people through that business and with that purpose. It's inspiring to people. It gets you out of bed. You go to the offices of Patagonia in San Diego, you'll be stunned. Monday morning, people are running up the stairs, 2 at a time. They can't wait to get to work, right? Because what they do is inspiring to them. It's natural and is grounded in practical realities. Every great company has a great purpose. Google started from day one. Before they were even formed, they wrote down their purpose, organize the world's information and make it easily accessible and useful, and that gave them enormous opportunities. And you can see just in 15 years what they've been able to do. as a business. So they were born with purpose. So, what do they say? Some people are born great and others achieve greatness, or whatever. There's an expression like that, right? Some companies are born with purpose, others realize purpose with a midlife crisis. Just like I was well into my 50s before not close to being 50 when I found my purpose, right? Waste management is an example of that. A company that, was rolled up, and a bunch of companies that basically took your stuff and buried it in the ground, and their valuation was based upon the number of landfills that they owned. And that's all it was about. And then a new CEO came and said, that's not the answer, that's not the future. Right? We're just burying the problem for future generations to deal with. So he said, we're actually going to make landfills obsolete. We're going to work with companies like Walmart and say, how can we get to zero landfill with you? They became an environmental services and consulting firm, essentially, trying to minimize the amount that they're taking into the landfill. And with the residential side, they said, we're getting paid $13 or $1 billion a year to take away people's trash and put it in the ground. We actually feel that there's about $15 billion worth of value in the waste stream. We're going to extract that. They set up hundreds of plants to recycle and to generate energy out of all of that, right? This garbage company became an exciting place to work after all of this, right? Because now people say, wow, this is part of the solution. This is not part of the problem anymore. Okay, the second pillar is stakeholders. And here, there's a blind spot that many of us have as individuals, and I think companies also have. We have to recognize that we are our own most important stakeholder. See, people who are very purpose-driven and service-oriented often forget about taking care of themselves, and they say, I'm all about serving others. Right? And therefore, you don't take care of your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual well-being, and therefore you burn out. But people who are more purpose-driven burn out at a higher rate. I used to tell my students when I started teaching conscious capitalism, I said, I can never burn out because I'm living my purpose. And they said, we'd like to do a research paper on that. And they came back a few months later and said, actually, the evidence is that you burn out at a higher rate because you get totally out of balance. Right? You're not doing the things you need to do to replenish yourself in order to be able to do that which you love and care about, right? So you are your most important stakeholder. Taking care of yourself is not a selfish thing. I think as Neha puts it, it's a self-full thing, right? Because you have an understanding that you have a duty towards yourself as well, so that you can then be of service to others, right? Same thing with companies. The company is its most important stakeholder. See, when we map stakeholders, we forget about the company itself. If you're not adequately investing in the company and its capacities and its, the R&D, like in the old days, we used to have these massive, like Bell Labs, and all these big companies had massive R&D facilities, and they used to spend a lot of money doing those things. A lot of that is gone now. Companies are spending most of their profits now on share buybacks and on dividends. Over a 12-year period, it's about 99% of profits have gone to those things. In 2015, S&P 500 companies spend more than 100% of their profits on dividends and share buybacks, which means they borrowed money to buy back their own shares, which means they're not investing to the level that, and actually public companies invest at half the level of private companies in terms of plant and equipment and more assets and so forth. We are harvesting for today. It's like that golden goose parable, right? We're just taking it all today, like there's no tomorrow. That's what's happening with a lot of companies. So we have to make sure we're adequately investing in the company itself. And then we have to look at all of our stakeholders. And here the acronym is SPICY. Now, I don't have a good story for that other than I come from India. Right? And I crave spice. And what is life without spice? It's just bland and boring, right? And how did this country get discovered, by the way? What was Columbus looking for? He wanted some spices, yeah. But actually, it stands for the stakeholders, I think, in the right order. It starts with society. We have to be on the right side of society. We cannot be creating more problems. We have enough problems in the world, okay? We don't need to be creating more. So I know we need to be on the right side. We need to be part of the solution. Partners, investors. You can see there's a way that's about using and exploiting them to make money, right? Squeezing our suppliers, finding investors who don't ask how is the money being made. They just care that there's a lot of money being made. There's a human being behind that hamburger. You see him? But we call him a consumer. In marketing, we say consumer, right? So his job is to consume. Our job is to shovel as much as we can into him. Employees who don't care and the planet that's being damaged. So instead of that, we need to serve and create value consciously for each other. What more can we do? How can we make life better for all of them? Create value consciously for each of them, right? The quality of life and health and well-being of our customers, investments that make a difference and make a profit, right? True partnering, engaged, passionate, committed, excited, happy employees, and a healed environment, right? So we need to create value for all of them, and then we need to make sure that they're all aligned together so it's not a trade-off, right? So we can simultaneously create positive impacts in each of those. So this is where systems thinking becomes an essential skill. We need to understand not just linear processes, but how a complex system works together, right? This is how Whole Foods would represent their stakeholder universe. You can see they've got their purpose, core values. You hire people who have congruent values, who are also foodies who care about health, right? If you're a foodie who cares about health, working at Whole Foods is an extension of who you are. It's joyful to be there. If you're an outdoor enthusiast who loves camping and hiking, working at Patagonia or REI or LL Bean is an extension of who you are, right? You give them lots of freedom and great working conditions. They're happy employees. They're highly motivated. They're innovative. You treat your suppliers the same way. You get good quality products, great service. Customers are happy. They keep coming back. Profits grow. Investors are happy. Share price goes up. And then we can also do the things that we care about that are connected to the business. So Whole Foods cares about not only selling as much stuff, but they want to actually improve all those things, right? The food system, the health of the planet, all of that, right? So they've set up 5 different foundations. First of all, they give 5% of their net profits to local nonprofits connected to food and those kinds of things. They have the Global Animal Partnership that is raising standards for humane treatment of animals in the factory farming system. They have the Whole Planet Foundation that gives micro loans in 69 countries. About 5 million, mostly women, people have been loaned money so they can convert from traditional to organic agriculture. They have the Whole Kids Foundation that will put a salad bar and an organic vegetable garden in any school that wants one. And they've done it in thousands of schools. And they have the Whole Cities Foundation that is bringing access to healthy food into inner cities, starting in Detroit and then south side of Chicago and Newark and New Orleans and so forth, right? Again, all of these things are beneficial to the community, but they go back to the core business. They are synergistic. They help the core business as well. So that's how this works. But you have to remember that like a clock, this thing only runs clockwise. Right? So you can't say, I'm going to make a lot of money, focus on that, maximizing profits, and then I'm going to give bonuses to my employees, and I'm going to donate to the local symphony hall and so forth. You can't run a clock the other way. You have to run it the right way. Right? You have to start with all the things that actually create value. The third pillar is leadership. And here Peter Drucker said, there are only 3 things that happen naturally in organizations: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Okay? Everything else takes leadership. So you can take the most brilliant, thoughtful, caring, loving, conscientious people, put them in a room, come back 2 hours later, friction, confusion, underperformance. Until somebody steps into the awesome responsibility of leadership, which means, what are we trying to do here? Let's create a vision for what is possible. And a great leader can see beyond the horizon and create a vision that nobody else even imagined was possible. And then how do we get there? What's our strategy? Right? So great leaders are able to take us to a better place and coalesce all that extraordinary human potential towards a productive end. So the qualities of conscious leaders, and here the acronym is selfless. What's the opposite of selfless? Now, can you be a selfish human being and be a good leader? Is it possible to be a selfish human being and be a good leader? Well, sir, you only care about yourself. Everything is looked at through the lens of what does it do for me, right? So you say, I'm going to use all these people that I lead in order to achieve my personal goals, whether they're financial or power-related or whatever it is, right? That is not a leader. That's the definition of a tyrant. A tyrant uses other people to achieve their goals. A true leader is there to take people to a better place. They have a vision for what's possible, and they're motivated by taking people. We were just in Vienna, Austria. We went to the Viktor Frankl Museum. Viktor Frankl talked about self-transcendence as a level beyond self-actualization, that once we have transcended that, then now we can think about the collective well-being, right? And then it stands for all these qualities. Strength, you have to be strong. You have to have moral courage to be a leader, to stand up to all the challenges, right? Of course, energy and enthusiasm, love and care. You have to come from a place of genuine caring for human beings. See, that combination is critical. If you have strength without love, it's tyranny. In the last century, we had many leaders who almost destroyed human civilization because they were all about strength. And the leaders who have actually elevated human society and moved us forward, Lincoln, Gandhi, Mandela, King, they combined tremendous strength with a tremendous capacity for love. That combination is essential. Love without strength is ineffective. Strength without love is tyranny. Then flexibility, and you can see all of these kinds of intelligence. And the thing is, IQ is fixed and can only go down in your lifetime. But all these other forms of intelligence can actually grow dramatically. We can increase our emotional intelligence by leaps and bounds, right? We're capable of, and they actually matter much more. So the summary phrase that we use here, and this is what I was referring to Herb Kelleher, the summary phrase that my co-author on Shakti Leadership came up with is that you need to be the wise fool of tough love. What does it mean to be a whole, healthy human being? You've got wisdom. You've got the elder energy, the parent wisdom, right? The divine self. But you also have the healthy inner child where you can experience joy and you have a kind of innocence and playfulness, and that's where creativity comes from. But you can also be tough when needed. And you're always loving as well at the same time. As Martin Luther King said, we must be tough-minded and tender-hearted. It's not a choice of either or. We need to be both of those things, right? So again, elder, child, I would say this is a blend of masculine, feminine, and the elder and child, all of those things together. And we have to cultivate those that we are deficient in. Each of us might have a tendency to one or two of those, but we can cultivate the others. And then we need to have the discernment to know what is needed in a given situation, and then the flexibility to show up with that energy. That this situation calls for a light touch, right? A motley fool, they're great in terms of that, the foolish side, right? And that one. But they've got the others too. I've seen them. They can do all of them, right? But you need to have that, all of those capacities as a leader. Okay, the last of the pillars is culture. And again, Drucker. We lean a lot on Drucker because, he is the guru of management. He saw things decades before they became obvious to the rest of us, right? He said, culture eats strategy for lunch. He said, maybe it doesn't even wait, right? In other words, there's no MBA student here at Georgetown or anywhere in a business school who doesn't know the strategy of every great company that's out there. Okay, there's no secret, right? But how come we can't replicate those companies? Because the cultures are unique. The cultures are invisible, and yet they're also very tangible. And hence the acronym here is tactile. You can feel the positive energy and the vibe. You walk into a Patagonia or Wegmans or Container Store or Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or Southwest Airlines or any of these companies, you'll feel palpably the sense of energy and enthusiasm and genuine caring that people have, right? The energy is electric. So it's very tangible and stands for all of these qualities, as you can see. Right? And I'm going to focus on this one word because if you had to distill all of this down, what is the biggest difference is that conscious businesses are not just built on self-interest, they're also built on the human need to care. Human beings have a need to care. Adam Smith wrote another book. Anybody know what that is? The Theory of Moral Sentiments. It came 17 years before he wrote The Wealth of Nations. And that was about the human need to care without regard to self-interest. So the way I say it is that capitalism had a mother and a father, and they were both Adam Smith. But what do we do in life? We ignore our mother. We take it for granted, right? That's just what mothers do. They just love us and take care of us unconditionally and sacrifice everything. Meanwhile, we're running after the external validation that our fathers often give us. Again, I'm generalizing here. My daughters get mad at me for this kind of thing, right? But we left out caring. And we built capitalism on this one pillar, economics, mostly this one pillar of an understanding of what it means to be a human being. So the founders of Whole Foods actually asked this question, can you build a business on love and care? Because they say we look around and most businesses actually are built or have a tremendous amount of fear and stress. If you look at our friends who work at companies, most of them hate their job. They can't wait to get out of there, right? What do we use, carrots and sticks? What animal belongs between a carrot and a stick? You need a jackass, a donkey. But we use that for human beings, right? The threat of a punishment, the lure of an award of some kind. No, we need to be motivated intrinsically to do great things, right? Why do we have this hallowed institution called Thank God It's Friday? When I first came here, I used to joke with my American friends, I thought you guys go to church on Sunday. Are you so religious now? I said, no, don't you get it? We survived another hellish week at work, which means now we get to live, now we get to party. That means we get drunk, right? And then we do it again on Saturday. And then what happens? Unfortunately, Sunday rolls around, right? And then Monday morning. So I was at a conference in Seattle. The Dalai Lama said, heart attacks are highest on Mondays. You think that's true? See, I can't make shit up anymore because there are people fact-checking as we speak. You look it up, there are two studies. Heart attacks are 20% higher on Mondays. Our work is literally killing us. 4 a.m., we have a famous trauma specialist, doctor here from Georgetown. He's nodding his head. I was told 4 a.m. Monday morning is the peak of heart attacks. Our work is literally killing us. 120,000 Americans die every year because of the way in which we work. And if it doesn't kill us, it bores us to death. If you look at employee engagement data that Gallup puts out right now, the US actually, this has gone up 6-7 points in the last 10 years or so. So that's the good news. But it's only 34%, and that's the highest in the world. So 2/3 of people are still disengaged in their work. So actively engaged are 34% who care about what they're doing. 53% don't care, it's just a job, right? And about 13% actually hate their work. Globally, only 15% engaged. So it's like you've got a a team of 10 people are supposed to be rowing your boat. 3 are actually doing it. 5 are skimming the surface, looking busy, right? Pretending to work. And 2 are hitting other people over the head with their paddles, right? Or they're rowing backwards. You're not going to get very far. Now, there's a huge financial, obviously, implication of that, but I think more than that, it's a human tragedy. See, we only have this one life to live. Except those of us from India, we have many, but you guys, it's like, I don't know how you do it, but you got just the one, right? And in that life, you've got about 100,000 hours to work. It's 50 years times 2,000 if you do the maths, right? And work is inherently meaningful in our lives. Work matters in a human life. We were also at the Freud Museum. This is what we did in Vienna. We went to the Freud Museum and the Viktor Frankl Museum, right? What did Freud say? Love and work are the cornerstones of our humanness. This is what it defines. So we're the only species that works even when we don't have to, right? Because work is inherently meaningful for us. That's how we leave a legacy. That's how we make an impact. There's something within us that calls us to do that. Our question is, why can't we combine the two? Why do we have to leave our humanity at the door? Why do we have to put on our mask and armor to go to work and do battle and capture some market share and destroy competitors and do all these militaristic things that we talk about in business, right? Why can't we love the people we work with? Why can't we love what we do and love the customers we serve and care for each other and all of that, right? Why can't we integrate this? And this has kind of been the journey for me. In 2004 or 5, I kind of stumbled into this realm. I discovered companies that people were using words like compassion and love and caring and soulful to describe these companies. And so it ended up with the somewhat hokey title, Firms of Endearment. Remember the movie Terms of Endearment? Firms of Endearment, companies that are loved by everybody. We said, how does that happen? And we uncovered what we now call the principles or pillars of conscious capitalism. They had purpose, they had stakeholders, leaders, and culture, right? And then we said, how do they do financially? They're paying their people, like Costco pays double of Walmart, right? They're providing much better benefits, like Starbucks, part-time employees get health care. They're investing in their customer experience much more. They're investing in their communities much more. They are investing in the environment. They are paying taxes at an average rate of 34%. So we said everybody is getting a lot out of these companies. Maybe investors are getting a little bit less because investors get paid last. Remember, investors always get paid after everybody else gets paid, right? So we said maybe that's okay if you look at the total value that's being created here. But what we actually found was that these companies dramatically outperform in the long term. So the original book in 2007 was 9-1 over a 10-year period of the 18 public companies, and we had 10 private, but we looked at the financials for 18 public, right? And then we did a second edition of this book in 2014, I think. And we found over a longer period of time, even a significant 7.7 times outperformance, right? So this is not a trade-off. It's not saying you can either choose to make money or you can care about all these other things, right? These all go together. They're all part of the value creation engine. And these companies are very profitable, and profit is important. Some people say, conscious capitalism, you guys, you don't care about profits, right? Actually, no. Profits are a social good. Without profits, we don't function. It is socially irresponsible not to be profitable, because we could be using those resources and generate positive outcomes from that in some other way, right? Free societies don't function without corporate profits. Governments don't create wealth. They can only tax and spend wealth created by businesses. And without that, we don't have infrastructure, and we don't have public education, and none of the things we care about. But it matters how you make the money. These companies make a lot of money. But it matters how you make them. Because you can make the money by squeezing your employees and damaging the health of your customers and decimating the environment and doing all those things. Or you can simultaneously benefit people in all those dimensions. Because businesses create, but they also destroy wealth. This is something we need to remember. And it's not just financial, but intellectual capital. We're creating a lot less intellectual capital in business now than we used to, in terms of real breakthroughs, right? Because of R&D spending. Social well-being, social capital, trust and cohesion in society depends on the culture of the business sector. Emotional well-being, operating from love and care, not fear and stress in my life. Spiritual well-being, having meaning and purpose through my work. Impact on the culture. We spend $1.3 trillion a year on marketing in this country. That buys a huge impact on what people consider a good life, right? And most of it is a negative impact. If you look at the way women's bodies are used to sell products, for example. The impact on our bodies and the impact on the environment. A conscious business tries to have a positive impact in all these areas for all their stakeholders. And a traditional, conventional business would say, well, we're all about maximizing profits, as we're supposed to be, and therefore everything else that happens is a side effect, right? Well, I'm sorry, there's nothing on this planet called a side effect. We do things and there are effects. Just because you call it a side effect and you say it really fast or you put it in fine print, doesn't make it less important. That could be the most important outcome of what you're doing. You do things and there are effects. We need to do business with a spectrum of positive effects. It is possible because it is being done, right? We know it's possible. I think this captures the complacency, the sense of otherness, the sense of disconnectedness from each other that we've had. Everybody in this room, we're part of the fortunate people on this planet. We get to be here in this environment and do what we're doing. There are billions of people out there that are struggling just to stay alive, right? Our collective boat has many leaks in it. And it is one single boat. We are all in the same boat. This planet is one system. Humanity is one spirit. We're all interconnected, interdependent. What goes around comes around. You know, the air and water quality in the US has improved a lot. But we send a lot of our dirty manufacturing over to other countries, right? And then you read that in China there are rivers that are so polluted that you can't even use the water for industrial cooling. And there are cities where children have to put on a gas mask every day to go to school. And say, we don't want that. That's not okay. Well, and then you see these poisonous clouds floating over California, and they're filled with these poisonous gases, and it says made in China. So we didn't order that. Take it back. No, well, that's... Buy a $2 plastic bucket at Target, this is part of the cost, right? This shows up, right? It's all one system. We need to start acting that we actually understand this, right? We need to understand this reality and behave accordingly. So after, as I said, 11 years on this journey, we realized that this actually works. That's why we keep coming back, and David keeps coming back, and our commitment to it only grows and deepens. It really works, and it works for everybody, and that's important. Right? If it works for some people, but others it doesn't work for, no, that's not okay. That's why we are in the mess we're in right now. It's not working for everybody. And it works for some very basic business reasons. If you really want to dig into this, how are these they're not printing money in the basement, okay? There are some business fundamentals that are going on here, right? Their sales just grow faster. They get positive word of mouth from everybody, right? Their margins are better. Net margins are better. Why? Because they spend very little on marketing and very little on employee turnover. Costco's turnover is 7%. Walmart is 70%. Walmart has to hire 2 million people to replace those who voluntarily left. Costco people come and never leave. I think that saves a lot of money and increases productivity, right? So gross margins might be lower because you're not trying to squeeze your people, you're not trying to squeeze your suppliers. That's how you increase your gross margins, right? But you're not wasting money on marketing, too much excessive marketing and on employee turnover, right? So employee retention is much higher, engagement, passion, and this is the biggest thing. Average employee engagement worldwide is 15%. Southwest Airlines, 95% passionate commitment. Do you think that makes a difference? Everything runs on human energy. Human creative and caring capacity is what we are able to elicit in a conscious business at orders of magnitude above what traditional businesses do. Legal costs are lower. We're operating in a system of trust. These companies don't get sued nearly as much. Administrative costs are lower. They don't have a lot of managers. See, the dirty little secret is nobody likes to be managed, nobody wants to be supervised, and nobody wants to be bossed. And yet that's our language of business. Right? We need leadership. We don't need a lot of management. People are self-organizing, self-managing, and self-motivating. Right? So we don't need people telling other people what to do and making sure they're working. Much more resilient in tough times is greater well-being and flourishing. It's a way of doing business where everybody matters and everybody wins. And I think that's what we have to really aspire to here. Thank you very much. I'm not sure how long I talked, but thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Amanda Karst, the DC chapter coordinator for Conscious Capitalism. We are going to open up the floor for a few minutes for some questions for Raj. So if you do have a question, please just stand, raise your hand, project your voice. I see there's one already in the back. Please.
Hey, thinking about like internal company cultures, like as more and more of the workforce gets remote, what are your thoughts on like how business leaders can balance, like employee freedom is said to be something that, if they want to work remote, that can actually help company culture, but there's obviously something to be said. A lot of these issues Dave had to do with like they're walking into these physical headquarters buildings and things like that. So I'm balancing those things.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting challenge. Once you have the intention to do something about it, we'll figure out a good way to do it. I think even if people are working mostly remotely, there are times when they should be coming together, right, and having face-to-face connections with each other so they build the rapport and the relationships and all of that. So I think, companies, when telecommuting, I guess they used to call it, right? Remote working, etc. When that became possible, some companies, they basically took a chunk of their people and said, now you're going to work at home all the time, and other people will come in. And they thought, wow, that's great, I can work in my pajamas and watch some Oprah while I'm doing this, right? But then after a while, they started missing the social connections. And you have the weird phenomenon of people driving into the office to have lunch. Okay, literally. So they could see each other and just catch up on the office gossip, right? So we need to have some blend of that. The problem in business, we focus so much on efficiency, we don't look at the human side of that, right? So we need to have some combination where people have that flexibility, but there's also ample opportunity for people to connect, and then having that clear sense of purpose and core values that actually are manifest even in people working remotely, right? So we need to have, I think, all of those. But again, with the right intentions, I think we can figure out how to do this and make sure that we still have that cohesiveness in our workforce. Yeah.
What are the rules of the game of capitalism that government should play? Being in D.C., there's a lot of laws created here.
Yeah.
What's your perspective?
Well, I mean, there is obviously good public policy, and good regulation is good for good business, right? So we need to make sure that we do those kinds of things, and there are many policy things that would encourage and nudge people in this direction. I don't think you want to force people to do things, and I don't think you want to be too heavy-handed about that. The power of all of this comes from voluntary action. See, when we do something voluntarily and through our own free will, it has tremendous power. When somebody forces you to do it, like India a few years ago passed a new company act, and they said every company must spend 2% of their revenues, I think, on corporate social responsibility. Right? And you cannot do it on anything connected to your core business. So if you're in the food business, you can't do anything with food. You have to build a school or do something else, right? So now it became something people are trying to avoid and find ways around, because it's not coming from a place of genuine. But again, having said that, there are policies around taxation, right? Capital gains, for example. There are also institutions that I think can be reformed, like the stock market. There is a new stock market that was approved by the SEC a few months ago. It's called the Long-Term Stock Exchange. And this will address one of the critical things that has been really deviling our system, which is that activist investors who typically have a very short-term time horizon and are only looking to get a pop and a financial return, right? They attack companies like Whole Foods got attacked. Why is Whole Foods part of Amazon today? Because they got attacked by two activist investors who came in with essentially a ransom note on a Wednesday and said to John Mackey, you need to do the following things by Monday or else. You need to fire 6 of your 11 board members, you need to announce a massive layoff, and you need to put yourself up for sale. Or else. And he said, what do you mean? So you'll see, you'll find out. Right? It's that kind of, and by the way, he's written about all this, and it's not, I'm not revealing any secrets here. But that investor had only bought 9.5% of their shares. Jana Partners out of New York. And John gave an interview that afternoon in Texas Monthly magazine, I still remember. And he said, these guys are greedy bastards. All they care about is getting a quick hit on their, not really an investment. They're just like, speculating, right? And he said the founder of Jana Partners, the owner of Jana Partners, just bought the most expensive house in America on Long Island, right? So that's what he cares about. He doesn't care about our purpose, doesn't care about our people, doesn't care about our employees, none of that. And he said, Whole Foods is my baby, and they're trying to kill my baby. They'll have to kill me first. But still, John had to fly to Seattle that Saturday and look for a white knight, because our system actually empowers activist investors who have no agenda other than a short term, regardless of the human cost. Right? And there are many companies out there that do that, right? Sort of 3G Capital out of Brazil, to me, is the prime example. We have a whole section in the Healing Organization around, there are two energies behind growth. One is the empire building energy, right? Which is you want to just grow and acquire more, and no amount of money and no amount of successes, power is enough. That's how empires got built in human history, right? Whether Alexander the Great, any of them, got built on conquest and killing and suffering. And a lot of businesses are doing that. Massive. When 3G Capital comes to town, life gets bleak. You have massive layoffs, and then cost controls that every year everything has to go down. I mean, there's enormous impact on people and their health and well-being, etc. That's one energy. The other energy is Bob Chapman, that I wrote this book, Everybody Matters, with. He's bought 108 struggling and dying manufacturing businesses, mostly in the industrial Midwest. People thought they had no future. You can't survive as a little manufacturing company in Phillips, Wisconsin. Right? It has to go to Brazil or China. But he came and said, no, we're going to actually pay people fairly, treat them superbly, and compete globally right here in Green Bay and Phillips and all these little towns. He bought 108 of these companies. He brought manufacturing back from Brazil. He treated people and put them at the center. Right? And he keeps doing that. And then he bought, last year I was with him and I said, how are you doing, Bob? He said, oh, we're looking at 10 to 12 more acquisitions this year. And I said, Bob, don't you have enough? You bought 108 companies. And he's never sold a single one, by the way, right? It's like adopting. You don't adopt a bunch of kids and say, okay, no, we don't need so many kids, right? That's what they do with their companies. And I said, Bob, you've got 26 grandchildren and 108 companies. Don't you think when the number of companies exceeds the number of grandchildren, you should slow down and enjoy your life? You don't need money, I know that. And he said, Raj, I don't know how much time I have left. And in the limited time I have left, I want to touch as many lives as possible. I don't care about how much money I make or machines I build. Right? I want to touch as many lives as possible before I'm gone. I said, Bob, you're not growing a business, you're spreading a healing ministry. When Bob Chapman comes to town, life gets better. Those companies, those towns have a future. Right? And I think that's what business can be. So again, the long-term stock exchange has different rules of listing, where the amount of voting power you have depends on how long you've held your shares. Right? So if you buy shares today, tomorrow you have zero voting power. You can't control the destiny of a company that's been around 100 years just because today you bought a bunch of shares. Right? You didn't invest, you didn't give them any money, you just gave somebody else money, right? Who happened to think it's time to get out of that stock, right? And I think I heard it from Tom or David that short-term investing is an oxymoron. Investing by definition is for the long term. And so we need to empower long-term investing, which means we need to have rules that do that. So I think there are policy things definitely that can be done. Our emphasis in conscious capitalism is to work with leaders and companies and try to inspire them from a place of intrinsic motivation and higher consciousness to do these things. And a lot of people say, well, let's make it all about enlightened self-interest, right? That this way will make you more money and therefore do it. And I say CEOs go to chapter 6 and they say, okay, this produces more outcomes, so let's do it. I say, in that case, if that's the only reason you want to do this, it probably won't work. You have to do it for the right reasons. You have to want to do this because it's the right thing to do for people and for our children and for the planet and for the other species that we share the planet with and so forth. So, how are we doing on time?
Thank you, Raj. We have time for one more question.
Okay. Yes.
So I have a slightly unformed question, but it seems to me that there's perhaps a leadership gap. And
Yes.
my question to you is, what is it going to take to reach a tipping point? Because what you've outlined here, I think, is ironically simultaneously intuitive and very counter to the status quo.
Yes. Well, that is the big challenge, and that is why we exist. I mean, we're trying to bring about that tipping point so that this becomes the default way of thinking and being, right? But of course, there's a tremendous amount of embedded systems and people, within our systems, right? Boards of directors are mostly populated by people who came up under that old system with that old mindset and the narrow definition of fiduciary responsibility being only to shareholders, and people who primarily care about power and money. They're primarily motivated by power and money. And those are the ones who occupy most leadership positions in most big companies, I would say still today. And they are a tremendous gatekeeper to all of this because they don't see a problem. They're making tons of money and they're doing fine, right? The unfortunate reality is, and there are some two very disturbing studies, and we actually write about them in this new book, one out of Australia, one in the US. So they did psychological profiling on executives, right? And they determined that, the incidence of sociopaths and psychopaths in the general population is about 1%. But in Australia and in the US, they found that in the ranks of high, people who are rising up the corporate ranks rapidly, it's about 20%. Okay? It's the same as it is in a high security prison. High security prisons have 20% sociopathic behavior, tendencies, and same in executive ranks. So it's like a Darwinian thing. We have created a system that is self-selected, right? For people who deliver the numbers, quarter after quarter, year after year, we don't ask questions, how did you deliver those numbers? What was the human cost? And what are the long-term impacts on the business going to be from all of those things that you did, whether it's layoffs or whether it's create a toxic work culture. Or, this 3G capital out of Brazil, it's incredible what they do to punish people and to reward people, okay, under their system. It's incredibly corrosive. Unbelievable, actually, some of the cases that are going on in Brazil right now against that company. Right, so that's what happens in our existing system. So we've got a real problem there that if you appoint the wrong kind of person into leadership, see, the consciousness of an organization, there's an upper limit based upon the consciousness of the leader. You cannot rise above that. If the leaders are at a particular level of consciousness, you'll be below. So until we replace those leaders, or until those leaders somehow have a transformational experience and an epiphany, Bob Chapman did. I mean, we wrote about that in the Everybody Matters book. He went through 3 epiphanies and awakenings in his life. Now, that's not predictable or controllable, but that can happen. The same leader can become a different human being. Ray Anderson of Interface woke up one day, he read one book by Paul Hawken, Ecology of Commerce. Why? Because he had to give a speech on sustainability. He said, I don't know anything about this. What should I do? And somebody said, read this book. And he read it, he woke up, he said, oh my God, I'm a plunderer. What I'm doing should be illegal. If there was any justice in the world, people like me should be in jail. I'm stealing the future from our children and from this planet. Right? So all it took was one book. So we don't know how to systematically transform people. The whole name of the game is elevating consciousness. If we can elevate consciousness of all leaders, political leaders, teachers, business leaders, everybody, every challenge in society goes away with higher consciousness, I think. We're able to do that. But we also need to select for higher consciousness, right? And we need to develop the kinds of emotional and spiritual intelligence in people. So I think that's our great task. If you're in a business school, that is our great task. Make sure the right people, in the sense of the right reasons to become a leader, and then evolve them and deepen their capacities, right? If people are becoming leaders purely to make money or acquire power, well, they're going to cause a lot of damage in this world. They will have that empire-building energy. Right? And no amount of success will ever make them happy, because there's always more, right? And there's no limit to that. Right? So I think that's a great responsibility for us as business. Unfortunately, my experience in the last 10 years is business schools have been holding us back. The world of practice has moved far ahead and far faster. In business school, we're still stuck in the old paradigms and the old ways of teaching and thinking. I think we need to restore ourselves to that position of thought leadership. We have become practice followers, not thought leaders for the most part. Right? And that's fine. There's value in saying this works in practice, now I can make it work in theory. That's good too, because then you can build on it, right? But I think we also need to be thinking more in those ways. And one of the things we don't have is a lot of people in academia don't have their own sense of higher purpose. It's all about publishing in certain journals and getting tenure and doing, just climbing that academic hierarchy. You're not motivated by what's the impact on the world of my work. There's an interesting book called Intellectual Shamans by Sandra Waddock out of Boston College, where she has profiled 32 academics who are actually trying to heal the world through their work. Okay.
Thank you.
The BDO program that you're doing. Like you're starting this with the
Yeah. So we are starting, thank you. There's a company called BDO in California, a big accounting firm. So with them we are, what are we calling it? Conscious Business Leadership Academy or something. So it's a year-long journey for CEOs to be actually able to go on this kind of transformation and deepen their consciousness and so forth. Right? But I think given that they're seeking to apply to such a program, they already are coming with a certain level of consciousness to that. So.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank
We're
you.
going
Thank
to give
you.
you a chance.
Thank you.
As Raj has a moment to catch his breath, thank you so much for that amazing presentation. I wanted to give everyone some directions on logistics. We have plenty of books for everyone. Please take this card with you. And in the back, if you haven't already picked up a book, we'll guide you to the back, on over, and then down this row over here. But before we wrap up, Ed Ofterdinger and I wanted to say some closing words.
Sure. Raj, fabulous. Thank you very much. So first off, I'm Ed Ofterdinger. I'm the chairman of the Alan Ofterdinger Group. But most importantly, I'm the co-founder of Conscious Capitalism of DC, because I happened to be in the audience when David Gardner had his moment of clarity and said, I'm going to have a chapter. And I always stuck my hand up every time anybody said anything, and so I said, hey, I'll help you. So here we are. So thank you for that. So I get the privilege of saying some thank yous. Okay, so first off, Larissa, great closing question, because we're actually trying to inspire lots of people and get lots of people involved and lots of leaders involved. 7 out of 8. Yes. Yes. Thank you for that. So I just want to tell you a little bit. This is our advisory board. If you are in the room, either stand up. I know Jake. I see Jake. Brian, I think. So we got Mark Anderson, who's not here tonight. He's the founder and CEO of MGAC, which project management. We got Jake Brody, who's from Accenture. He's the Southeast region leader for Accenture Interactive. We have David Gardner, obviously. Kimberly Grant, who is Jose Andres' CEO. She's not here tonight, but she's very involved. Jody McLean, who is the CEO of Eden's, large real estate business here based in D.C. The wonderful Amanda Karst. Brian Schwab, who is the managing partner of Venable, and Dan Simons, who is the co-founder of the Farmer Restaurant Group. This is the group that is leading this charge for now, and so I want to say thank you for your leadership. And Audrey, it was about communication, and she's the head of communications for the Fool. So not everybody is a good fool. I am looking like a fool right now, so thank you. Audrey Robertson, she's great. I want to thank the organizations that have already stepped up to get involved. I really want to thank Georgetown. And one thing I do want to say, Raj did not mean to intentionally say that the McDonough School is not involved and following on to having things like conscious capitalism. In fact, I believe they have one of the first, if not the first, certificate program in conscious capitalism, which, thank you. And thank you for hosting us tonight, Jeff. Mostly I want to thank a true visionary, a really interesting person, a really great guy, Raj. You blew it away as usual. Thank you. So, 60 seconds or less before I turn it over to Amanda to wrap us up. Recently somebody asked me, like, well, what is the value of the DC chapter to a local business? I mean, what are you really getting out of it? Why would somebody join up? And so here's what I said. So I'm just going to go through my list. First off, connecting with other like-minded people. I mean, one of the things, you go to the CEO conference in Austin and you just immediately know you have found your tribe, okay? And that's a little bit what we want. So you connect. Hopefully this will be true. Fun and informative events like this with good food. And with the people we have on our leadership team, founding farmers, all of Jose Andres, you're going to get good food. I trust you. And trust me on that. I think opportunity to learn from other conscious capitalist businesses. One of the things we say, David and I talked about this early on, is not everybody is at A+ yet on this. We're all on some journey. And if you want to be a part of the journey and you want to learn, to the rest of this question, how actually the great companies are doing this, this is an opportunity, because the programs we have in mind, there's a lot of education involved. Opportunities to educate your teams. As you can see when you go to the website, there are various ways you can get involved, and some of them get you 8, 10, 12 memberships. You can bring your team. I won't steal what's the first event from Amanda. She'll get to that. Two last things, and I think these are personally really important. This is a chance actually to get in on the ground level in DC. To David's point, it's really kind of amazing that we don't have this already here, but we do now. And you have the opportunity to be at the beginning of something that we think is actually going to be a really, really big deal. And that really leads me to the last thing that I would say, which is, if you didn't believe capitalism was under attack before tonight, just look at some of the things that you heard today from Raj. And so we actually have an intention that we will be a voice. This is the most powerful city in the U.S. If you get involved with us, somehow, some way, we are going to be heard. And I think we have a chance to actually, as a movement in total, save capitalism. That's a pretty big thing, but that's what John and Raj thought up 11 years ago. We can actually have a difference and save capitalism. So hopefully you will want to be involved at some level, and with that I give you Amanda.
Somehow, some way, we will have a voice, and that will be, of course, with your help. Our next event will be coming up in January. We'll be focusing on conscious culture. And we're really rallying for all of you to join us at that event. Our vision is to be a thriving, sustainable community. And we can only do that with you. And in the same spirit, we know that the membership asks that we have put out there might be unattainable for some, that it might not be affordable for some. With that spirit, and in the spirit of inclusion of everyone, we're all in this together. We do serve community. The advisory board has 8 professional partnerships that they are putting out there for free. The reason why I want you to hang on to this is please share that information with your colleagues. Maybe you know a budding entrepreneur, maybe you're one yourself. Please reach out to me. My email is right here listed down there, and then on the top here is our website. But we really hope that you can join us no matter where you are in your journey. Thank you.